Federalist Paper 18, Part 3. It happened but too often, according to Plutarch, that the deputies of the strongest cities awed and corrupted those of the weaker, and that judgment went in favor of the most powerful party. Okay, just a note, Plutarch was a historian that had written short biographies of important Grecians and Romans, important people in the history of Greece and in the history of Rome. And a lot of the founders were very familiar with this work. Even in the midst of defensive and dangerous wars with Persia and Macedon, the members never acted in concert, and were more or fewer of them eternally the dupes or the hirelings of the common enemy. The intervals of foreign war were filled up by domestic vicissitudes, convulsions, and carnage. Notice he uses these words quite a bit. Vicissitudes, ups and downs, turbulence, not stable, convulsions. It's like if your body is really, really, really sick, you'll have convulsions and shakes, and carnage, destruction, mayhem. So he is reminding his readers that if we do not unite, we will be just like these old ancient people of Greece and Rome. We will be dupes and hirelings. We will be played by the European powers, by the monarchs who do not want to see a republic established. After the conclusion of the war with Xerxes, it appears that the Lacedaemonians required that a number of the cities should be turned out of the Confederacy for the unfaithful party they had acted. The Athenians, finding that the Lacedaemonians would lose fewer partisans by such a measure than themselves, and would become masters of the public deliberations, vigorously opposed and defeated the attempt. This piece of history proves at once the inefficiency of the Union, the ambition and jealousy of its most powerful members, and the dependent and degraded condition of the rest. The smallest members, though entitled by the theory of their system to revolve in equal pride and majesty around the common center, had become in fact satellites of the orbs of primary magnitude. He is warning the states that are small or do not have a large population that the same thing that happened to the small states in Greece and will happen to you too if you do not unite in a strong union. And the Greeks said the Abbe Milot, or Milo I should say. Now you're going to hear the names of historians that Madison had been reading. Remember I said Jefferson sent him a lot of books, and he had been studying these books for the previous 3 years, because Jefferson started sending them in 1784, or around 1784. Okay, I'll read this again. Had the Greeks, says the Abbe Milo, been as wise as they were courageous, they would have been admonished by experience of the necessity of closer union, and would have availed themselves of the peace which followed their success against the Persian arms to establish such a reformation. Instead of this obvious policy, Athens and Sparta, inflated with the victories and the glory they had acquired, became first rivals and then enemies, and did each other infinitely more mischief than they had suffered from Xerxes. Their mutual jealousies, fears, hatreds, and injuries ended in the celebrated Peloponnesian War, which itself ended in the ruin and the slavery of the Athenians who had begun it. So here when he says celebrated, he doesn't mean the word celebrate like we do now. He's talking about the famous, very well-known Peloponnesian War. The Peloponnesian War is very important. Took almost 30 years. There was an intermission in between, but here what happened was both sides, Athens and Sparta, got very prideful and jealous of each other and distrustful of each other, and they started a war which ended up in ruining both of them. So he's giving a warning to the 13 new states who might become confederacies. He says, this might happen to us too. We might take sides, and before we know it, we will go to war against one another, and that would bring us destruction. One thing I can tell you is I have shown you the videos or the website of the teaching company, those great courses. I'm sure you can find this on different video resources, but on Teaching Company and elsewhere, you can find the history of the Peloponnesian Wars on videos, because they use a lot of names that if you do not speak English as a first language, or you have not read this history in the past, even if you are an English-speaking person, it would help you if you watch those videos and learn the history and then become familiar with those names. That's something I did, because I never learned the Greek history of Greece, or anything like that, quite a few years ago. Because when I came to the United States, I was going to study engineering. I did study engineering. So because of that, I really did not get educated on history like I should have. It was only after that I started becoming curious. So I'm saying there's no shame in learning something new if you don't know it, regardless of how old you are. So keep that in mind. We will continue in the next part 4.